Hi, welcome to the COCI podcast. My name is Cassidy.
And I'm Chiara.
We are two high school students currently taking a government class. We're recording from Half Moon Bay, California.
And the date is November 21st.
Our 2-episode podcast is going to be focusing on what life is like for people after they serve their sentences and how prisons might prepare or fail to prepare people to return to society and lower recidivism rates. Welcome to episode 1. On this episode, we're going to be talking about pre-prison and in-prison programs that help with rehabilitation and lowering recidivism. For this podcast, I had the privilege of interviewing Leslie Dunn, who is a Superior Court judge in Los Angeles County for 35 years, exclusively assigned to criminal cases. Prior to being a judge, she was a prosecutor for 6 years. I had a wonderful time speaking to her, and she was able to provide really great insight into the progress of prisons over time. So let's hear some clips about what she had to say.
When I first started out, the criminal justice system had resources, and there were efforts to provide education, drug rehabilitation in prison. Over the last couple of decades, as we lost financial resources in particular, and also political will, there was less of an emphasis on rehabilitating people. And even outside of the prisons, so many persons who end up in the criminal justice system have drug problems.
Right.
And there's just a critical shortage of drug rehabilitation programs in prison and outside of prison. I don't think that they prepare people to return to society. They're grossly underfunded. They don't have the resources. I don't even know that they have the ability to help people. What might help people would be to be educated when they're in prison. And there is some effort. I don't want to make it sound more bleak than it is. There are AA meetings in prison that people can attend. There are some classes that people can attend. But it's certainly not a focus. And most of the time that people spend in prison is dead time.
So Leslie just mentioned that she didn't feel prisons prepare people for society because there's a lack of rehabilitation programs and a decrease in effort throughout time. Now, both of us did research into programs that are effective, so what are some things that you found in your research?
Well, you know, Cassidy, I was actually watching a video on YouTube, and...
From who?
From Refinery 29, and it was fascinating because it talked about a prison in Oregon called the Coffee Camp Correctional Facility, and they talked about how they have this beauty school that they allow inmates to take part in, and it allows them to build their skills, which then when they're released, they have skills that are useful for getting jobs.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great program. In my research, I found an organization called Prison Fellowship, and they have educational programs where they can give people classes on how to pass like a GED test and just general life skills. And I think classes like those are also really important into reducing recidivism because these are really good in reacclimating people to society even in prison by like teaching them the things that they're going to need, setting them up for success once they leave. And I also looked into Correctional Industries, which are government-supported organizations, and one of their main goals is to train people who are incarcerated in job skills so that they can hold employment after they're released. And the National Institute of Corrections said that research indicates a correlation between incarceration, unemployment, and recidivism, and inmates also believe that holding down employment is important in remaining crime-free. We heard Leslie explain this.
It was sort of formulaic that if you have a drug addiction and you're poor, you're going to steal to feed your drug habit.
Right.
So there was a lot of recidivism with people who had serious drug addictions and had to steal to continue acquiring drugs.
So we know that holding down a job can eliminate the motivation to commit a crime, and so Correctional Industries training and efforts is really crucial to stopping reoffending.
Yeah, exactly. And programs like the ones in that Oregon prison really help the inmates to get new skills and learn things so that way they can hold those jobs in society after.
Yeah. So back to what I was talking about, Correctional Industries. One other thing that they really strive to do is while they train inmates who are in prison, they also do a lot of work with employers and trying to get employers to get away from that reluctancy they have of hiring ex-convicts and stuff like that. So they really rely on the people they train to set a good example to prove that having a criminal record shouldn't be a deterrent from being hired.
Yeah, that's great that you bring that up, because I know that in California, on job applications, it's not required that someone mark that they have a felony or that they've been to prison, which I think is a great step in the right direction towards helping people who have been to prison rehabilitate themselves and be reintroduced into society.
Yeah, also, I know that Leslie saw a lot of hope in the education of incarcerated people, and in 2019, Cal State Los Angeles became the first and only university to offer inmates the ability to complete a bachelor's degree. It's through their Prison Graduation Initiative program, where they send professors directly into prisons for in-person learning, because before, inmates could only earn an associate's degree. And so, corroborated by what Leslie said, I think that if more universities offered the bachelor's degree opportunity, it would definitely lower recidivism.
One major obstacle with programs like this tends to be the funding, because people think it's going to be extremely expensive.
Right.
But the Oregon prison actually found that for every $1 that they get from taxpayers that goes to their beauty salon program, they actually end up saving $5 in return, because people are not reoffending as much since they're able to get a job outside. So it lowers recidivism, which in turn costs less.
Right, and we heard Leslie touch on that too. So do you think just more funding into especially substance abuse programs would help lower repeat offenders?
Not just more funding, but that would help, yes. And as I said, there needs to be a political will. People need to view drug addiction as a disease rather than a crime, and divert resources that are now used in imprisoning people rather than trying to get them the help that they need.
Something that's weird to me is that these programs seem really successful in rehabilitating, but they also don't seem that common. They're not very widespread, right?
I don't think they are, because in the video I saw, they only talked about 2 prisons that had fully created these programs. I think a lot of places have partial programs that are easy to do, but a lot of times they don't want to put in that work.
Right.
But it's so important that we do that, so that way these people can be rehabilitated.
Right. We're naming all of these beneficial programs, but it seems like they're exceptions, They're not the norm, and I think that's a problem, because, if the programs, like the Oregon Cosmetic one, are successful, then why are there so few of them?
Exactly, and that comes back to the whole budgeting thing, because people are worried it's going to cost more, and maybe at the exact time that you're doing it, it'll cost more, but in the long run, people will be saving money because they don't have as many people coming back to prison.
The activism that's been occurring on the streets over the summer is changing people's awareness. I think that there's a growing consciousness, a growing understanding that mental health issues and drug addiction issues should not be dealt with in the criminal justice system. So I think it comes with a change of consciousness, and with a change of consciousness comes a change in law.
While Leslie doesn't think that prisons prepare people to re-enter society, she did just share what still gives her hope. Programs like the ones that Chiara and I have mentioned are rare but also successful, and expanding them would definitely help and lower recidivism. So we're almost out of time for episode 1.
In this episode, we covered prison programs, prison sentencing, and ways in which employers and prisoners can work together. And in the next episode, we will be focusing on the people in prison once they leave and their life outside of the facility.
Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for next episode.